Okay. Sorry, guys. It looks like we're live. I apologize. A little bit of a delay on my side. Let me go ahead and screen share here real quick. And
Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Ben
there we
Data,
go.
co-chair of
Got
DSW.
it.
This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. This community has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade, and this week we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors, whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors, who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible. Founder Track, Kickstart, Growth Track, Friday Health Plans, Developer Track, Quizlet, Product Track, Palantir, Designer Track, Battery 621 in the Public Works, People Track, Exactly, and Spotlight Event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement this week. Thank you to B-Side Fun, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing Company, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, Gusto, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pine Insurance, Promontory Mortgage Path, Red Bull Basement, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget to use hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experience and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Early risers, all-nighters, slow pours, fast crams, post-nap, on the mat, in the stacks, phone down, volume up, complete silence. You ups? Coffee cups, pizza crusts, first semester, fourth quarter, focus 100, privacy 0, pre-test, one last check, let's go. However you study, Quizlet takes the guesswork out of your coursework. Learn it, own it, Quizlet.
Hello everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Connor Swanson, the Developer Track co-chair along with Aaron Clark, and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you to all of our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep DSW free and accessible for all. Thank you for joining us and have a great week.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, thanks so much. Cool to watch the videos and see the introductions. And let me go ahead and do a screen share here. And just a quick audio check. I see my friend Jason Pullman out there. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. So for everybody that's joining, my favorite part about technology and being able to share on days like today is that I am actually in Denver this week, which is really nice. I'm based out of Indianapolis. And so to be able to use technology the way that it's intended, right, which is to make life easier and accessible, is always fun. And it feeds really well into what we're going to talk about today for security, especially as it relates to new startups, because many of you, if you're like me, I have launched, started, sold companies over my career. And I remember those started in coffee shops on a laptop with an internet connection just to get it, up and running. And that's the entrepreneurial life. And then you hope to build into something so much more. And so it's really cool and relevant. And I hope that you guys have a good time. We enjoyed getting to prepare for this for you. So my name is TJ Howski, Vice President of Operations, Solutions Architecture and Engineering for Otava, and I'm responsible for really the global day-to-day runnings from design for customer solutions all the way through ongoing support and then product innovation. So we're going to get to talk with some context today about security, not only how it can help you in things that you want to be thinking about, but then also as it relates to even some of the things that we're doing, and hopefully that it adds some education and some value to you. Oh, I apologize. I'll do a screen share. Okay, so let me go ahead and minimize a few things here and make sure that these screen controls are not in your face. Awesome. All right, so a little bit about us, just a quick backdrop, and then I want to set some context for today's conversation. So we're almost 27 years old, heading towards the 30-year mark. And we are a secure and compliant cloud solution offering. We specialize in customs. And so what I mean for that is we are, one of my friends here and a fellow leader says, we're the people's cloud. And I couldn't agree more in that we take what so many people struggle to do, which is in the middle, complex solutions into understandable delivery. And we make that with our product offering. And so whether it's cloud backup, disaster recovery as a service, also known as DRaaS, if you're using slang terminology, security, remote desktop, you'll hear things like VDI or desktop as a service. Those are industry terms, but in essence, just remote desktop, professional services, co-location, and then managed services, whether it be co-sourced or outsourced. We offer a lot of complex offerings in what we hope to be the easiest experience for you. We are certified and we do participate in spaces including HIPAA compliance, specializing with high trust certifications, PCI DSS, SOC 1, SOC 2, and then SOC 3, and then ISO 27001. And that is something that we're really proud of. It's really complicated and very challenging to maintain compliance in the landscape today. And it's something that we put a lot of time and a lot of focus into to make not only our customers confident, but some of them to be able to benefit from that in their own marketing on who you partner with, because it matters, who you surround yourself with, right? So if you look at just a little bit of our background, we started in 1994. Obviously, we've changed quite a bit, right? Started as a company that was really focused on, at that then time, what was relevant, abilities, co-location, presence points for folks to use for disaster recovery, to begin that process of backup as a service and to put services in alternative facilities, all relevant to today's security conversation. And then we continue to evolve, which, the number one focus of a business is adaptation, and what better audience than startups to talk about that. And then we've continued to grow through acquisition, and just recently completed a new partnership in our newest acquisition in New Cloud Networks, which is where I am today. Currently now a New Cloud is an Ottawa company, but we're located in Denver, Colorado. So it's been really fun to come out here and get to know more folks and see the area, which is great. So that's our background. And then just a little bit, geography for you, just presence points globally. We have 18 data centers and presence points, a blend of third-party services, co-location, and we continue to grow. And so the point of that is just that we can meet you where you are, and we have different offerings for different customers in our data centers, and it's great, offers a lot of flexibility for folks to identify what's meaningful to them. And we're excited that we continue to focus on that forward growth and expansion. And again, we do have international presence points. It's important. I know a lot of folks are really looking for that, and they're looking for it relative to security and the restrictions that are attached to that. So you'll see that both in the UK, Romania, and which is a people location, as we call it, one of our management offices, and then 2 data center presence points now in Germany. All right, so today we're here to talk about security, and more importantly, just like what's in it for you. How is it relevant? Everybody talks about it, and I think they talk about it mostly at an individual level. What I wanted to spend some time real quick is to give some context. I've been participating in the IT space, whether it would be sales, solutions, engineering, hands-on keyboard, so engineering and management, executive leadership for 22, almost 23 years now. And I've seen a lot of the landscape change, but interestingly, I've also seen that a lot of things that are, they seem new are really just a rinse and repeat in today's modern time. And context makes things really powerful when you're starting to look at how this applies to you. So interestingly enough, you'll hear that security attacks are on the rise, right? On this slide, we're talking specifically about ransomware attacks. 19% are directly related to misconfigured cloud servers. And you can see that the costs associated with ransomware attacks are on the rise, right? We're talking billions of dollars and growing, because in fairness, for some companies, they're finding the unfortunate experience that in that most desperate moment, it's easier for them at times to pay for the ransom than it is to go back and try to fix some of the issues relative to security. And then they have to address that going forward. That's a new scary understanding that's coming to the reality, where folks are having to sit down at a table and really discuss what does it mean to be postured and prepared properly for security. And so this is pretty interesting. Statistically, from a global security perspective, if you remove ransomware, this is the fewest victims that have been exposed individually to attacks since 2015, relative to the first half of 2021, with only 118.6 million people impacted on recent exposures. But why is that relevant when you're talking about individual attacks versus ransomware? And that is because what you're seeing is a shift from bad actors that have, for the longest term, long-term focused on individual resource exposure, right? Where they're attacking one person and they're looking whether it's identity theft or credit card access or things of that nature, to now the bigger attacks. And those bigger attacks affect the audience on this call. They also affect the Otava audience, right? Us as a company. This is the thing that we have to protect for, because they're realizing that where the long game for crime is in ransomware, and that's where the money is to be made. And unfortunately, the tools are a lot easier today for folks to be able to take advantage of that. And so what you see here is the growth trend relative to the payouts and the damages associated with such attacks. So it is a serious thing to discuss, and that's why we're excited to spend some time with you here today. When you look, I got a little bit of activity on the slide, sorry. When you look in 2020, the average cost of a data breach in the US was over 8.5 million, right? So we're trending towards 9 million, quickly into $10 million per breach. Interestingly enough, you're also finding that the average downtime related to a breach is roughly 21 days of downtime, right? So on average, statistically speaking, of all things assessed in that census or in that sample size, you're looking at 21 days of business services interrupted and roughly 287 days average turnaround time to completely restore, right? So you're talking a long impact, even though for some businesses, especially large companies, they might look at this and go, that's a lot of money, but relative to the size of our business, that's small risk. That's not when you look at the productivity impact and the brand damage and some of those things that, how much money can you put on your reputation and your character, right? Of the 8.64 million, 52% of breaches are caused by malicious attacks, right? And then you see the top malicious attack methods broken down by compromised credentials, which is really your username and your password, right? Cloud misconfiguration, which can happen in a lot of ways. It doesn't have to necessarily be a technical resource on the backside that didn't deploy the technology properly. It could be a code bug, an opportunity that's an exploit has been identified, a vulnerability, and then it's targeted. And I'll give a little bit of context to that here in a minute. It could be third-party software vulnerability. There's an example just recently I pulled before this call. I was interested in what was going on relative to the first half of this year. And in the top 10 attacks, it's public knowledge, so we can talk about it. One of those companies is Park Mobile. And if you've ever traveled, like I do quite often, I'll visit and park downtown, and Park Mobile is a very universal app that you can use. And they actually weren't who was breached. It was their third-party software company that was breached. But the brand damage rolls upstream and downstream, right? Phishing attacks, which that has been around since the very beginning. And that's just, proposing that, hey, click here, and representing something that's not true, right? And you start to, drive behavior, and hopefully you get folks to follow that trail to lead them into what you ultimately want to accomplish, which is, negative activity. And then physical security breaches, and then obviously insider attacks. And that's something that that equally is something that you have to be cognizant of as you continue to especially grow your business and you start to bring in more resources. Be diligent in the background checks, right? Be diligent in your security awareness program. Okay, so real quick, one of the things that I want to take a step back here, because there's a broad audience on here. I took a little bit of time this week to take a look at the folks that were coming on, and there's some that are very business centric, not a lot of technical background from what I understand, and there's some that are really technically technically inclined, and there's somewhere in the middle. And for me, when I started in this industry a while back, I was not technically inclined. I had a bent towards technology, and I loved it, but I think sometimes when you live in a landscape of acronyms, right, acronym soup that comes with security, and you hear folks talking in technical terms, there's this assumption that just because everybody talks in it, they clearly understand it. And here's the reality. Security changes so fast that most folks that would tell you they are quote unquote experts in security are learning on the job. What they have is a great base understanding of the most common infection types, the most common attack types. And that's what we're talking about here today. This is not designed to be all encompassing. It's just the most common. And then what you're also going to see are some best practices that we like to give to folks to say, these are just some common best practices. Now, crazily enough, what we have found is that over time, the most common tend to be the most overlooked. And so folks don't pay attention, and then they look back and go, man, I wish I would have known. And so when you look at some of the top ransomware infection sources to date, you're looking at these different attack types. And so one of them is the Trojan attack. And that can be something as simple as an email attachment that contains, malicious code, and clicking on it, and all of a sudden somebody is, able to do things or push stuff through your network that, you weren't prepared for, and obviously you don't want. One of the most recent articles I was reading was an attack. It's the third one down, which is removable media, where the attraction to that is actually more about the bait of the USB itself than what's necessarily on it, right? That's the interesting part of the attack itself, is that folks, just by nature, human condition is to be curious. And so they see something sitting around that they might not know the source of it, and they're interested what's on it, and they plug it into the network, and all of a sudden they're facing a really bad day. And I can actually relate to that. Roughly 10 years ago, I was responsible and running one of the 5th largest health networks in the country. And we had done a really good job using a specific security product that was not only designed to protect us at a network level, external and internal, but it was designed to protect peripheral exposure. So things like USB devices or phones, bring your own mobile, right? And folks plugging into the USB ports just to charge their telephone. And it just so happened that the one part of our deployment that we were still working on in the project was protecting the USB ports on all of our end user devices around the network. And that's what happened. Somebody plugged in an end user device. In this case, it was a USB. It had malicious code on it. And it caused a massive problem, interruption of services for us for over a month. And while it didn't bring us down, it absolutely negatively impacted productivity in the business. And we realized that in the business performance when we looked at the quarter-over-quarter numbers. It was a bad time for us in technology in that season. And so these are very real things that happen. And unfortunately, I've walked through some of them myself. And then you look at ransomware as a service. That's one that Jeremy and Jason, who are on this call with us, and you're going to get to hear from true experts towards the end of this call if you have some questions. They made a good point to spend some time on ransomware as a service. Excuse me. And here's why. It's become easier. It's become easier to go and coordinate an attack, even if you don't know what you're doing. And so if you're somebody that just has, the desire to go out there and cause havoc and, participate in that negative activity, there are folks out there that are creating the tools that are necessary for you to be successful in that. And while folks might not necessarily know what they want to do with the data once they infect the target, nonetheless, they're still successful because those folks that are spending the time and the diligence to create the tools that they're using are truly experts in creating, compromising scenarios. And so it's important that you understand that now the most challenging component that faces technology is that anybody can do it, right? How did we know that roughly 13 years ago, when you look at the average evolution of a mobile device, would we get to a place that there's more power in your phone that you carry around than the first spaceship that landed on the moon? It's pretty remarkable and scary at the same time when you look at what you need to account for and protecting your brand, protecting your business, and being a good steward and protecting those around you, right? So. And then how to properly prepare. The goal of these calls, at least when I host them, or conversations when I have them with my peers and leaders, right, especially from a business perspective, is I do not expect my chief financial officer to understand the nuances of security and why we need to invest to protect our customer base. He understands that, right? I can speak in his terms of equally he's taking those steps to put revenue assurance protections in place and to do compliance on the financial side of the house. But what I do want to make sure that he understands is that we can play offense. We don't have to be afraid. And that's what I want you here on this call to understand today, is that sometimes I've heard folks speak a message, especially if it's driven towards selling a product or selling a solution, that you should be afraid, but oh, by the way, I've got the solution for that. The reality is some of the top 3 things that you can do won't cost you $1. One of them is security awareness. And you'll find that as you continue to grow your business and you put more people into your business participating with you and furthering your core focus, right? What you want to do to bring positivity and impact the world, is help them understand the nuances, the basics of, common sense in choosing your password, character substitution. Don't choose things that would be directly attached to you, like birthday or names of kids or first street that you grew up on or your first pet, right? And unfortunately, most people do that. Don't keep standard and default passwords on, critical, really any infrastructure, but particularly critical infrastructure. I find folks do that a lot when it comes to wireless routers and some of their default equipment that they're putting in place. It's super important that you remove the basics. And then the last one is basics, patching and maintenance of your infrastructure. And your infrastructure for you as a small business owner, you might think that's for the big guys. No, that could be your laptop, just keeping your operating system patching, care and feeding up to date. That could be your antivirus signatures that you're just keeping up to date. Those basic things do a whole lot more than you think. Now, as you grow and as you go forward, that's why there's a marketplace for immutable storage and some of those things. And so as you look through this preparation list, we'll just kind of go through quickly here. We've touched on a few of them, but the first one, again, keep your software updated, right? Keep your signatures up to date. And some of those, they're updating on a daily basis because you have day zero attacks and new things that are always being found and coming out. Make sure that you do a threat analysis with your security team. And you might be saying, hey, TJ, like my business is roughly small. Maybe you do $2 to $10 million a year. You have 23 total employees, and you're the person that is the chief financial officer. And then in the afternoon, you're doing break fix on some basic laptops because you're wearing multiple hats. I've seen it. I've been it. And so threat analysis sounds super big. Security team sounds unreachable, unachievable. Your security team is you, right? You're first and foremost responsible for your brand protection, but it could also be a third party. It could be somebody like an Otava or other vendors out there that you just pick up the phone and you have somebody that you can call on a quarterly, semi-annual basis or annual basis to do some basic posture assessment of what are you doing? How are you relative to the market? And that doesn't have to cost you a lot of money, and it doesn't have to cost you a lot of time, but it can sure as heck make a significant difference in your go-forward strategy. Train your staff, including yourself, on basic cybersecurity best practices and simple things like, hey, make people prove who they are before they just assume that when they show you an identification, that's who they are for social engineering attack or physical access. Make sure that you understand what you're getting in an attachment and from who it's from and the relevancy of it before you click. Sometimes we do things out of habit and we don't think that through, right? Use strong passwords and change them on a regular basis, and don't use anything that's personally identifiable. Use appropriate tools relative to not only your industry, but the size of your business. Don't try to buy the Cadillac when the Volvo will do. But at the same time, when the Cadillac might be necessary in certain segments of your business growth, don't buy the Cadillac or don't buy the Volvo, right? You got to evaluate what's the right thing for you based on the timing and where you are to goals. And the big one that I see for a lot of folks, excuse me, is the misunderstanding of backups. And so for some folks, they say that, from a disaster recovery perspective, we back up, we back up our data. But the big question is, do you test your backups, right? So do you know that your backups are valid in a moment? So what that means is that part of your security analysis when you do that regular cadence is verifying that the backups that you're running, they work, and that you give yourself the opportunity to do some testing, whether that's once a quarter, twice a year, once a year, if that's the minimum, to just make sure that the diligence that you're working so hard and paying for and spending time in to protect your data, it's going to work in the moment when things aren't going well. That's good security. Remember that the triad of security is not just what you hear the most about, which is confidentiality of information and integrity, protecting the data type, but the one that most people don't talk about, and that's the one that costs you the most amount of money, is availability. And availability is uptime, because uptime directly affects your core service offering and the things that you're doing as a business owner. And if you can't produce revenue relative to what you're trying to bring to the market, you won't be here. And then all of a sudden you realize the impact of security. And so availability is significant. Backups directly feed into that. Restoration time and how you get back online matters, right? And then some basic fundamental rules within the IT world is use a 3-2-1-1-0 rule. And what that means is have 3 copies of your data, right? On 2 different media types, and one of which is offsite, one of which is offline. with 0 errors. So let's go through that real quick. And then when we get to the panelist section, I hope you ask questions, because there's some really intelligent, good guys on here that can give some great practical wisdom. And I'm pretty sure that collectively between us, there's about 50 years to 60 years of industry experience, from operations to security to services and architecture. So you've got a lot of people that you can pull from to just talk to. But you want to get multiple copies of your data. You want to have it on different media types, right? So just kind of walking through this one more time, which could be, one could be on storage, off-site, right? And then one on-site. One could be on a local drive, right? Like an external separate drive if you're a small shop, or a small array if you're a small shop. And then the offline component is that it's dark storage. You've stored it, it's offline, it's only accessible for manageability, and there's no risk of somebody else being able to get to it remotely. And then you bring it online when necessary. So I call it cold storage or dark storage protection, right? And then immutable copies of your backups. Fancy for saying something that point in time is protected, that you know that if somebody was to hold you hostage to say, hey, I'll give you this data back for, and then they give you the dollar amount, you don't have to worry about that, because you have a copy that they couldn't have modified. You have something that's protected that takes you back to that point in time and that you want. And then the last one is the one that folks most often make the biggest mistake, and that is the errors after backup, recoverability, and verification. And that's, most people just kind of glance at the green check mark versus the red check mark and then go, yep, my backups ran, or nope, they didn't run, there's a problem. And the reality is, we care most about, is it a healthy backup, not just that it ran. And that requires some diligence and testing, and making sure that your backups are successful. And then let's talk about some basic fundamentals from zero trust protection, right? And that is MFA. It's a fancy term for multi-factor authentication, which is, again, a fancy term for saying more than one form of ID, right? And so if you, if you go in to open a checking account, right? Or I went to the BMV just recently and I needed to update the registration on my vehicle. They wanted more than one form of ID. If you changed your driver's license to travel, there's you have to have the proof of identity now, the star that's on your driver's license to get, onto an airplane. They required 3 forms of identification: utility bill, something like a driver or a birth certificate, a current driver's license, and then another piece of identification. That's multi-factor authentication in real life. And in the technology world, multi-factor authentication is no different. It just sounds fancier, right? And so I have to sign in with my username and my password to log into my work account every day. And then I have a third-party system that intercepts that and says, hey, before you let him in, make him validate that he is who he is, which triggers on my cell phone. And then I tap the button real quick. I say, yep, I'm TJ. I'm asked to log into TJ's account, and then Otava lets me on the network. It's that simple. It's a service offering that we provide. It's very streamlined and go to market. You're going to see that that's pretty commonplace today, you hope, for most things that you're doing. Secure endpoint devices, enforcing policies and controls. They kind of go hand in hand, right? Both technical and administrative. But the goal here is that as you put your devices into the network, that you're doing the proper things. You're putting protections on them, security protections for signatures, antivirus updates, malware protection. But then also that you've got tight policies. The way I like to say it is, if it's not needed, right, then don't turn it on from a services perspective, and then slowly work your way into what's acceptable, like minimum standards for making sure that you're not affecting business productivity and availability, but still trying to do the best that you can to maximize the protection and reduce the overall risk profile to the business and to the folks that are participating, within it. And then role-based access control is a super simple concept. And again, I'm a dad of 5. I have a 5-year-old, I have 4 daughters and a son, right? So I have a 5-year-old all the way to a 20-year-old. So I have to think in simple terms for my 5-year-old and communicate in those, and then be able to shift gears. And so when you look at role-based access control, I think about it this way. The access that I am going to give my 5-year-old, if she wants to play around and watch some YouTube TV videos or some stuff on my iPad, is very different access than I'm going to give my 20-year-old if he wants to get on my laptop and do some work or do some college, curriculum. And that's no different than in the work world. Role-based access control, you're simply controlling what you want your user to have access to, and less is more. The least privilege access rule still, in my opinion, is one of the most important and often underestimated. And then recovery this is something that's best practice, but also an area that we can put a plug in there for. So forgive us for the shameless plug, but necessary, because I think folks, when you hear this, I'm hoping you're asking, okay, this all sounds great, but who do I go to for help, or how do I get that? And we are one of those, that can do that. And so it's important through the recovery process that, if you're doing internal or if you're partnering with external, you have clearly documented what that takes to get your systems back online. And I'm going to focus on that one versus all of the others on here. And here's why. As a small business owner, it's very easy. I can do it today, and the ops tempo for Otava is very fast. We have a lot going on as a fast moving company. As a small business owner and somebody that's growing, right? Whether you're mid-market, small enterprise, it's very easy to tell yourself you'll go back and do that later, right? And so you'll go back and change your password later, or you'll go back and document where you saved those documents, or how to get to X application or tool, or how to put that and install it if it were to break down on you. And it's super critical that you don't do that to yourself, because in the moment that you have to restore something, you will not be able to work off of your memory. You're in the worst possible circumstance where you're affecting productivity and you need to restore services. You want to make sure at a minimum you have it written down on how to restore your services, how to put the basic things back in place so that you can run your business and get back to servicing and making a positive impact in the world. The other elements, right? The 24/7 NOC monitoring, uptime and availability, testing and discovering, restoral points, and all the more technical components. Yes, super necessary. Yes, you can partner with third parties to do that, but it's the little things that cost you the most amount of time. And it's the little things that you look back later and go, man, I wish I would have done that. And I hope that that's what value we can bring to you today, even more than our product set, is our wisdom of the mistakes that we've made. They say that good judgment comes from bad judgment over time. And so I hope that that's what we can pass. And then some really critical discussions now that are very relevant relative to what you see in the market as a result of the pandemic. And that is what I call the blended edge. I've heard people refer to, there's no edge, there's no boundary. They're not wrong. That's accurate too. But I think it's the more challenging discussion is the blended edge in the remote workspace. And that is, we're extending corporate services or business services into your home life. And there's always a balance there that gets very interesting between whose device is it? Does the company own it, or do you own it? Or is the answer yes, both, right? Especially if you own your own business as an entrepreneur. Who owns the internet there, and who manages the equipment, the Wi-Fi, the router, the Wi-Fi cable modem, whatever that might be? Who's in charge of that? And who's responsible for the cell phone that's coming in and out of the building, or that you're using at home, and the applications that sit on top of it? Most of the time, I find the answer is yes across the board. And so this blended edge has become an extremely challenging time for both small, medium, large enterprise and Fortune level companies, because at the rate in which most home networks have extended, because it was based on necessity, right? They say the mother of all invention is necessity. And so folks immediately were turning up home offices at record paces, literally breaking the internet, rapidly deploying hardware, putting out SSL VPN tunnels, which is just a remote connection from end to end. But it's the little things that have not yet been addressed. It's who owns password and controls, who owns policy and governance, meaning what's acceptable use on a home network with a corporate device, right? The little things that go a long time. Now you've got somebody working full-time at home using their corporate device, but maybe their kids are using that device to do some schoolwork. And now you've got another user on that device. And whether you say they can or they can't do that doesn't mean they won't, right? And so you've got to balance that. These are things that you want to be thinking of that are just some very common sense best practices for remote at-home work. So follow the rules and the regulations, which first starts with clearly defining what are the rules and the regulations for your teleworkers. Set up secure virtual access. And if you don't know how to do that, or if you're like, man, there's only 10 of us and we're just trying to do this best, then look into products that solve for that need. Things like desktop as a service. Desktop as a service is a subscription-based, literally desktop delivered right to your device, whatever that device might be. And you can go ahead and outsource all risk and let your cloud service provider do that for you. Patching, maintenance, monitoring, alerting. And it's great from a cost of ownership perspective. And then do the basics that we talked about. Change your default passwords on a regular basis, not just one and done, right? Provide security awareness. What you'll find, especially as you continue to grow a company, the more people that are aware, educated, the better off that you are, because now you've got little security officers everywhere, hands and eyes, that are out there that can help just reinforce best practices and common sense behavior to make things good for you. And then slow down to speed up. Make sure you slow down to develop your contingency plan. Know where you are and where you need to be in the event of an emergency. Don't wait till the emergency to figure that out, because it never goes well. And then challenge yourself that, multi-factor authentication, some of the basic things. I find that a lot of people dismiss the short term for the long. And so it's like, well, I don't want to pay for that because of where I am in my business. Maybe I want to wait. You can't afford not to pay for it. So it's about finding the right product for where you are within your growth. And then you can mature. And that's what this slide is all about. We have multiple offerings. And this is an example. It's not designed to just be like, hey, here's my pitch now that you're at the end of the call. This is example of pick where you are, right, relative to the product solution that you need, and then grow into it. And you might find that you need near zero, recovery point objectives, which is our disaster recovery of a service with Veeam. We also have a couple of other products that fit into that need. Or maybe it's most appropriate for you that you just prioritize business important services, and you can choose one of our other solutions to prioritize the top 3, and your other services maybe could sit in a type 4, an S3 archive storage solution, because you can blend technologies together, which is what's great about security posturing, is you don't have to have all or none. And you don't want to have some and none. You want to have everything protected, but protected in a way that's based on what's the criticality of the application and how does it affect your top and bottom line in your business. At the end of the day, that's what you're in business for. You're not in business to just put a bunch of IT into your business, right? And so it's super important that you understand the difference between the technologies. And the point here is that Otava as a company has a great data protection suite and a lot of different options. And what I love is that our products come with people. And so we take your priorities, attach it to all people to be able to sit down and design the most appropriate solution for you. And then we do things like this. We talk about product highlights and what the difference is for you in Otava land versus the rest of the world. And we focus on those things that mean a lot: security, compliance, and what we do to make sure that our customers are protected. And you get to piggyback on that brand recognition and strength and security posturing by saying you're one of our customers. And then we also do some very unique things in that we don't charge for ingress and egress bandwidth. And we don't charge traditionally for migration fees. We have a lot of things that are included in our product sets that lets you pay as you grow, which is really great, right? All right, and so that kind of brings us to the end. I apologize that this is actually one of my first times getting to present on this section of the product content for Otava. I've gotten to do this with customers all over the place, but to sit with an audience, and it's kind of weird, by the way, when you're doing in a webinar format versus in person. And so I want to open this up to be able to let folks ask questions if you have any. And I want to introduce you to two really smart and great guys, in Jeremy Pommering, who is our security lead here at Otava. And I joke, I've known Jeremy for about almost 14 years now. I'm pretty sure he has forgotten more about security than most people will ever know. He literally has almost every coveted security certification that you can get in the industry. And he's passionate about it. He loves helping people and protecting them. And then equally, Mr. Jason Pullman, who is passionate for helping people map solutions, who has a great background in both operations and then now sales and technical architecture, and then service delivery, which is really great. And he's been with Otava quite a long time as well. So he's a wealth of knowledge and history. And then collectively, if you put the three of us together, we're old. And so we represent north of 50, probably 60 years of experience across different landscapes. And the goal of today is to just give you a forum to bounce questions if you want them, and to give us feedback. We hope that the content that we provide is relevant and it makes a difference for you. So I'm going to open it up. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat thread. Brandy is on there helping us. And then you can also come on live, I think, Brandy, or is that just for the panels? They have to post them in the chat threads. She'll probably comment for me. All right. Either. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Speak up. All right, cool. So real quick, Jeremy, Jason, just do a quick audio check. Can you guys hear okay?
Loud and clear.
All right, cool. Jeremy, you good?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I couldn't reach my mute button there.
All right, no problem. All right, well, so here's a couple of questions. I'll put it out there in shotgun style. Either of you guys can pick it up. All right. So the first question, can I be sued after a ransomware attack? Which one of you? Jeremy, you want to pick that one up? That sounds something you've dealt with on incident response.
I'll take that one. Yes. The short answer is yes. And so I think it's very important that you do a lot of these things that TJ mentioned earlier. Make sure that you do your due diligence, that you're doing everything right, so that you don't leave a window open for someone to come in and say, hey, well, they missed this step, or they didn't do this or that. I think that opens you up for suit. So that's the short answer for that. Yes, you can.
Got it. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's see. Another question. You mentioned having an incident response team assembled like a cloud service provider such as Otava. Who else would you recommend as stakeholders on the response team? This is probably a good question for both of you guys to jump in on. So do you want to take a shot at it first, Jason? Give your thoughts. You've put your operations hat back on from the past, and then Jeremy, you could jump in and add some color too.
Yeah, and also something, happy to, and also something from the last question. There's cyber insurance out there as well, and there's different levels of cyber insurance. You should look out there. You should also understand how much, like you said in the beginning, TJ, how much a typical ransomware attack costs, to really understand how much cyber insurance you should look into. So there's different levels of the cyber insurance, so make sure you take advantage of that as well to protect, because it's just a matter of really not if, but when. You brought up a lot of good points through that. I like to, as we go through the Q&A, hopefully I can add some color to just some recent things that have happened. Incident responses, really, you should have a team assembled, not only your security guy or the guy you hold responsible for patching the servers or taking care of your AD server for directory services, but really you need to think outside the box. You need to think about if there is potential for brand damage. Include your PR person on that team, your marketing person to get the word out there. If you're with a cloud hosting provider like Otava, have Otava. We can be a part of that team, the incident response team as well. So great question. And don't forget to, if you went to HIMSS this year, the keynote was all about not only having the incident response team, but activating it on either a quarterly basis, twice a year, or once a year, but activating that and doing tabletop scenarios to make sure everybody's on the same plan, working to the plan, and reducing the impact of a breach.
That's great. That's really good stuff. Solid nuggets. Another thing too that I like to educate folks on, for those that are listening, how does Otava deal with it? If you separate us as a cloud service provider and look at us as a customer, right? Because we're equally a customer buying some other services, reselling services, having to manage our own infrastructure. We deal with the same obstacles that we're talking. So some of what we're giving you here is really just relative to what we deal with on a daily basis. Recently, one of the largest virtualization vendors announced that they had identified a vulnerability in their code and that they recommended immediate patching across their infrastructure for anybody that was using those particular revisions. And as such, we had our incident response team that immediately reviewed, went into the stakeholder meeting to address what are the risks to not only the business, but to our customers and to some of our customers that are reselling services. So they're subtenants, right? So 2 degrees removed. We had to build the appropriate response and include that in there. And we deal with the same thing that everybody deals with. And so we can appreciate the different hats that you have to wear, whether it's operations or whether it's sales or whether it's leadership or technical hands-on keyboard. We get it. There's a lot that goes with it. All right, let's see. Any other questions? Brandy, do you see anything else in the chat? All right, nope. Cool. Well, guys, Jason, do you want to elaborate real quick? I can go back a slide, but you have been participating now on the sales side for quite a while, and I kind of cruised through this to get us to Q&A to give it open. But would you like to add a little bit of color to any one of these relative to some solutions you've recently designed and how they've solved for some real world problems? Because I know you got a big brain for that and you're passionate for it. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, there's a lot done on the architecture side, and this is done prior to the sales. It's really that one thing Otava provides is a solutions architect on before the sale goes through. Excuse me. Just put a plan together, and the plan is going through and actually doing an assessment, if you will, of the environment, what you have out there, and helping to classify if your applications or your servers are business critical, if they're mission critical, or if they're utility, and then overlay a response solution for each of those tiers. And that's all done on the pre-sale side. So you don't have to be an expert at understanding how to apply some of these, because we have the expertise at hand available to help and assist in developing those plans and getting the right solution to meet your needs. So not every server is business critical, even though if you talk to the app owner, they may say so. But that's what the actually deliverable, the output of our analysis gives you, the ability to see it on paper and go through it methodically and actually assign your servers, identify those mission critical applications that have to be online all the time to serve serve your customers. And it's a methodical process where you can actually see what's going on and apply that to each of your tiers of servers. So it's something that Otava has done for many years, and our solutions architects are very adept at doing this analysis, and it's all just part of the process here.
That's great. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Okay, guys. Well, a couple of things that I'd like to leave you with, just things to consider, right? I have found in, all this time in the industry that with confusion comes profit for those that are not doing this right or well. And what I mean by that is sometimes folks, like I said, they narrow in on it's about selling you a solution, a product, and that's going to solve your problem. And what I can tell you that most common beginnings of large security issues are attached to behavior. And so it is really important that you slow down to pay attention to the fundamentals of what is my security posture in terms of just basic awareness. Am I aware of what I'm doing with my passwords? Am I reusing my passwords across multiple devices? And if I'm doing it, I have to assume that anybody that works with me and for me is doing it, because that's just natural, human behavior. And you have to assume that when it comes to security, if you don't know much, then most of your folks, unless that's their specialty, they don't know much. And I find that for some folks, it gets intimidating because unfortunately in the technology landscape, we tend to spend too much time talking in vernacular. Folks get lost. And so therefore they just dismiss it until later when they look back and go, man, I wish I would have known. And so the thing that I'm proud most of at Otava is that we have really great people. And you're going to find that many solutions that we offer, other folks offer. That's just the nature of the market, right? But what we offer that I know a lot of other folks don't is taking what you're seeing today, and that is a unified body of experience across a diverse, space, and sitting down with a client to help identify what's your real business issue, and then helping break that down into what are the problems that you're trying to solve for to ultimately fulfill a solution for the business issue. And we use technology to do that. And we use people to match it to the right technology and honoring your budget and your goals with success-based outcomes. So I want to say thanks so much for spending time here today and appreciate the opportunity. So a shout out to Denver startups. And I think it's cool, by the way. I know that the backbone of the economy is built on the entrepreneur and folks that continue to drive innovation. And I love that. It's awesome to see that it's alive and well, and folks have a heart to want to make a big difference and chase the dream. So if there's anything that we can do for you, our contact information is listed here. I'm sure that it'll be forwarded to the startup community as well. But feel free to reach out directly to any one of us, and we would be more than happy to sit down for free and just review some of the basic fundamentals. And if there's a product within our suite that could make a lot of sense for you, we'll show you how. But more importantly, we can help you with the basics of just understanding the building blocks to design appropriate security posture. And then how does that tie into these technologies briefly that we touched on today. You can also visit us at otava.com. So if there's no other questions, then I will go ahead and honor your time. Oh, looks like there's one more that came in. So I'll still honor your time. I'll answer this question. can Otava help me put together an incident response plan? Yes, Otava would love to help you put that together. And so for the person that asked that question, if you'd like to shoot an email to any one of the three of us or to the three of us collectively, and the first person to respond will pick you up and just schedule some time to sit down and talk, we'd absolutely be happy to do that and talk through what you're looking for and what does that actually entail and what are you trying to achieve. So yes, please take our contact information, shoot it over to us, and we'll get on the phone with you and walk you through. So, all right, Jason, Jeremy, did you guys have anything else that you'd like to add before we close and land the plane?
I think I just, you mentioned the priority of backups. It really is a priority. You can do all the things right and still have, you mentioned the parking thing earlier. A vendor can get hit and cause a ransomware event for you. So backups and restores, they're very important, that 32110. So keep that in mind. No matter how good you are at everything else, you're only as good as your best restore or your ability to restore. So.
Solid word. How about you, Mr. Pullman?
I would agree with that. And MFA is also very important. I throw out those acronyms like everybody knows them, but multi-factor that you mentioned earlier. I just read earlier that and all of you may be impacted here shortly. If you have a Yahoo account or a Google account as well, both of them are requiring 2FA. In fact, Google just today, 150 million accounts, they automatically turned on 2-factor. So if you haven't used it yet and you have a Google account, you will be using it by tonight.
Hey, well, there you go, right? The worst time to find out that you need security is when you've been breached, guys. So my recommendation is to just have an opportunity to sit down and talk with folks in advance and just assess your posture and then go from there. Don't do it from a fear-based perspective. Just do it from making sure that the hard work that you're putting into developing your business stream is not lost at the hands of some unscrupulous people. So thanks for spending time with us today, and I hope that you guys have a great rest of the event. And hopefully we'll talk to some of you soon.